Steelers Nation, brace yourselves, because what came out of this Week 12 breakdown wasn't just a simple prediction, it was a powerful warning about everything that's on the line right now. Every detail, every adjustment, every question surrounding this matchup completely shifts the atmosphere in Pittsburgh. The message is clear. We've reached that point in the season where nothing can be wasted, and the next step will say a lot about where this team is headed. So come in strong. Drop a like to support the channel if you've ever celebrated those unforgettable plays from our legendary Terry Bradshaw. Now let's get into it. The entire week has revolved around one question inside the building. Is Aaron Rodgers going to play? The fractured wrist on his non-throwing hand has turned this into a day-to-day evaluation, and every single update from Mike Tomlin has made one thing clear: the decision hinges entirely on functionality, not reputation, not history, and not desire. Rodgers has been pushing to play, no surprise there, especially with Chicago on the schedule, a matchup he's carried emotional weight into for almost 2 decades. But Tomlin made it clear, he needs to see Rodgers practice, and not just show up, but execute at a high level on Friday. And that pressure point alone tells you how thin the margin is for this team right now. Behind the scenes, the conversation has shifted in ways fans need to pay attention to. Rodgers hasn't been himself since jamming a finger on his throwing hand back in Week 9. It's not speculation. The film, the production, and the efficiency numbers all point to the same trend. The accuracy has dipped. The velocity looks different. The grip clearly isn't the same. In the first half of the season he looked like an above-average starter. The last 3 weeks, the passing offense has dropped into the bottom tier of the league. So even if he suits up, Pittsburgh won't be getting the full version of him, and that brings Mason Rudolph right back into the center of the conversation. Inside the organization, there is real comfort with Rudolph. He's done it before, 3 straight wins in 2023 to push this team into the postseason, and last week he executed exactly what Arthur Smith asked from him: efficient, clean, structured football. Yes, a lot of checkdowns, but also big third and long conversions and a touchdown drive when it mattered. With this defense playing at an elite level lately, the Steelers don't need magic from the quarterback position. They need structure, discipline, and ball security. That's why if Rodgers isn't clean on Friday, Rudolph becomes the smarter option, even if Rodgers wants this game badly. And speaking of structure, the offensive identity looks different depending on which quarterback plays. Rodgers thrives with full-field reads, post-snap manipulation, and the freedom to feel out defensive rotations. Rudolph is a high-low, simplified progression passer who stays in the pocket and delivers. The staff knows exactly how to build around him: heavier personnel, tighter reads, controlled tempo. But the real foundation remains the run game. Arthur Smith wants to run the ball even when the numbers say not to, and that isn't changing this week. Jaylen Warren continues to flash as one of the most underrated backs in the league, with elite contact balance and open field creativity. The jumbo packages with Spencer Anderson and Darnell Washington have become a signature look, forcing defenses into uncomfortable heaviness. The Bengals bottled it up last week, but that doesn't change how central it is to the game plan. On the other side of the matchup, Pittsburgh's defense is stepping into one of the most intriguing tests of the season. Caleb Williams may still be ironing out details of the under-center game, but his talent is undeniable. His arm talent outside the pocket is unlike anything most defenses prepare for, and the Bears' explosive play rate shows exactly how dangerous he is when chaos breaks loose. The Steelers have already emphasized the importance of finishing sacks after watching how easily he escaped pressure last week. Expect a heavy dose of 5-man pressures, Tomlin's staple against mobile quarterbacks, designed to compress rush lanes and eliminate escape routes. The secondary transformation has been one of the biggest internal storylines. Moving Jalen Ramsey to safety and adding Kyle Duggar has unlocked the defense in ways fans need to appreciate. More too-high structures, more discipline over the middle, more physicality when rallying downhill. This group has played like a top 5 unit over the last 3 weeks, and this matchup, a Bears offense that loves in-breaking routes and intermediates over the middle, is exactly the kind of challenge where those adjustments matter. There's also the quiet but important concern at corner. Darius Slay is expected to start despite struggling significantly this season, and with Joey Porter Jr. likely taking Rome Odunze, that puts Slay on DJ Moore, a matchup Chicago will absolutely test. Add Patrick Queen's issues in coverage and missed tackles, and you can feel where the Bears may try to exploit space. But everything still comes back to the trenches. The Bears' offensive line is one of the most improved units in the league, and Pittsburgh's defensive front is the heartbeat of this team. Whoever wins that battle dictates the entire afternoon. The Steelers have shut down elite backs and also surrendered big rushing totals. It has been volatile, inconsistent, but capable of dominance when the safeties support correctly. So that brings us to the real question sitting over this entire week. With so many injury variables, matchup wrinkles, and strategic adjustments in play, what do you think this means for the Steelers heading into Soldier Field? Starting from exactly where we left off, because everything about this matchup starts tightening the moment you shift from the broad storylines to the real pressure points that decide games in November and December. And inside the building, that's exactly how this week has been treated, not as a routine road matchup, but as a defining test of identity, discipline, and execution. The biggest internal conversation has revolved around how to handle Chicago's offensive structure. The Bears have become one of the most explosive teams in football, and it isn't because they're throwing the ball 45 times a game. It's the blend, the play action, the misdirection, the willingness to run downhill on early downs, and the trust they've put in Caleb Williams to create when the pocket collapses. That combination forces defenses into hesitation, and hesitation is where explosive plays get born. That's why Pittsburgh has spent so much time drilling five-man pressures this week. Tomlin loves this structure against quarterbacks who excel outside the pocket, because by condensing lanes and forcing immediate decisions, it removes the scramble to create windows Chicago thrives on. But the key is discipline. Every defender, especially at the second level, has to carry their responsibility to the whistle. Caleb is the type of quarterback who punishes one false step, one missed contain, one angle taken too high, one delayed collapse from the interior. The Steelers saw the Giants lose 6 near sacks last week because they simply didn't finish. That has been hammered home again and again. Another pressure point is how Pittsburgh handles the Bears' running game. It's not just the raw yardage that makes it dangerous, it's the varied tempo, the vision DeAndre Swift is showing this season, and the emergence of Kyle Monangai as a true complementary threat. The Bears love using the run to force linebackers to flatten, then attack behind them with crossing routes. And the Steelers know Patrick Queen has been a roller coaster in coverage, extreme athleticism but frequent misreads, out-of-leverage drops, and the highest missed tackle rate among linebackers in the league. That's a matchup Chicago will absolutely target, but this is where Pittsburgh's recent defensive evolution becomes so important. The move to more two-high shells with Jalen Ramsey and Kyle Duggar has changed the way this unit plays run support. Instead of selling out the box, they're trusting the interior to hold just long enough for the safeties to fill aggressively. And Ramsey, in particular, has been exceptional at reading flow, triggering downhill, and punishing ball carriers who think they've reached the third level untouched. That style takes a little risk, but the reward is more eyes on the quarterback, more bodies rallying to crossing routes, and fewer clean passing windows on in-breaking concepts. And then there's the chess match on the other side of the ball, because Pittsburgh's offense shifts dramatically depending on who's behind center. With Aaron Rodgers, the scheme expands, full field reads, more pre-snap manipulation, more layered concepts that rely on timing and trust. But with Mason Rudolph, everything becomes more streamlined, high-low reads, quicker decisions, a heavier emphasis on protection identifiers, and a far more decisive commitment to the run game. That isn't a downgrade, it's simply a different blueprint. Arthur Smith has leaned into that identity all season. Even when the run game stalls, even when defenses stack heavy personnel, he refuses to abandon it. And while last week's jumbo sets didn't produce the explosive gains Pittsburgh wanted, the philosophy remains. Control the game physically, wear down the defensive front, and force the linebackers into hesitation. That's where Jaylen Warren becomes such a problem. His balance, his contact strength, and the way he turns small windows into chunk gains make him the most reliable engine of this offense right now. Even without a dominant offensive line performance, his ability to make something out of nothing keeps the Steelers out of disastrous down and distance situations. But the real matchup that could shape this game is the Bears' secondary against Pittsburgh's size. Darnell Washington has quietly become one of the most important pieces in this offense, not just as a blocker, but as a pass-catching mismatch. At 311 pounds with soft hands and surprising agility, he forces defenses into uncomfortable decisions. If you match him with a linebacker, he wins physically at the catch point. If you match him with a defensive back, he wins through sheer size and leverage. That's why the Steelers have leaned into running mesh concepts with Washington and DK Metcalf, two massive bodies crossing at full speed, forcing defensive backs into collisions and hesitation. It's not flashy, but it's effective, especially against teams that rely heavily on zone spacing. But Chicago may counter with something Steelers fans know all too well: disguised rotations and late safety triggers. If Jalen Johnson returns, it changes the dynamic entirely. If he doesn't, targeting Darius Slay, who Tomlin openly plans to start despite season-long struggles, becomes a central part of Pittsburgh's passing script. And it's not subtle. Chicago will attack Slay with DJ Moore. Pittsburgh will attack Slay with DK Metcalf. Both sides see the same weakness, and all of it builds toward a central tension that Steelers fans can feel. This game might come down to which team protects their weak link more effectively. For Pittsburgh, that's Queen in coverage and Slay on the boundary. For the Bears, it's the tackling inconsistencies on the edges and the tendency for the interior line to lose leverage late in games. This matchup isn't about hype, it's about precision, about identifying the small edges, about exploiting the cracks before the other side adjusts. And inside this organization, there's no sense of panic, just urgency, focus, a recognition that the AFC North has tightened, that the margin is thin, and that games like this decide playoff seeding, or whether you're even in at all. So as we head into the final stretch of preparation, here's the question I want to leave with Steelers Nation before we head into the concluding part of this breakdown. Based on everything in this matchup, the quarterbacks, the trenches, the defensive evolution, and the pressure moments, where do you believe Sunday's game will truly be won? Continuing exactly from the moment we left off, because everything about this matchup becomes even more layered once you focus on how both teams adjust when the pressure hits. Pittsburgh isn't approaching this game with a single plan mindset. Internally, they've prepared for two completely different versions of themselves depending on which quarterback steps onto the field. And the reality is, that flexibility might be the single biggest advantage they carry into Soldier Field. If Aaron Rodgers plays, the offense opens up in ways that force the Bears into uncomfortable coverage decisions. Chicago doesn't want to sit in static shells against a quarterback who manipulates leverage as well as Rodgers does, especially when the fractured wrist on his non-throwing hand, and the jammed finger on his throwing hand, means he's relying more on timing and rhythm than raw velocity. But if Rodgers starts and isn't fully functional, the Steelers know exactly what the Bears will try: press early, force the ball out fast, jump intermediate patterns, and hit him on every drop back to test that brace, that grip, and his ability to absorb contact. That's why Pittsburgh has quietly rehearsed contingencies around tempo, designed movement, and early down spacing, plays that get Rodgers into a rhythm before Chicago can dictate leverage. If it's Mason Rudolph, everything flips. The Bears will expect simpler reads and more checkdowns, but that's where Pittsburgh has been quietly building answers. Rudolph thrives when the picture is clean, when the read is defined, and when the pocket is kept structurally intact. Arthur Smith's use of jumbo personnel, layered play-action looks, and condensed formations is specifically built to protect Rudolph from post-snap chaos. You'll see more high-low concepts, more backside drags, more pocket stationary throws, and more scripted third-down route combinations designed to slow down the Bears' disguised coverages. It's not flashy, but it's effective, and if the defense shows up like it has recently, that's exactly the game Pittsburgh wants. And speaking of the defense, the adjustments over the last 3 weeks have fundamentally reshaped how this group functions. Moving Jalen Ramsey to safety didn't just give Pittsburgh another playmaker, it unlocked a structure that fits the personnel perfectly. More two-high shells, more disguise, more velocity driving downhill, and Kyle Dugger's presence next to Ramsey has been one of the most important quiet developments of the season. Dugger's range, physicality, and instincts let Pittsburgh keep its identity while still defending the explosive play tendencies that Chicago brings. Caleb Williams will absolutely test that. He's at his most dangerous when he breaks structure, forces defenders into extended plays, and turns a covered concept into a 35-yard scramble drill completion. The Steelers know this. They've preached it, they've drilled it, and they've emphasized that missed tackles, especially against a quarterback who routinely turns losses into highlight plays, can be the difference between forcing a punt and giving up a touchdown. The Bears' offense thrives on those moments where discipline cracks. Mike Tomlin's defenses are built to eliminate them, but the Bears aren't one-dimensional. Their running game is legitimate, and their offensive line has become one of the strengths of the roster. DeAndre Swift's decisiveness and Monungai's burst have turned the ground game into a pressure tool, something that forces linebackers into hesitation and opens the door for those crossers, in-breakers, and layered play-action routes Chicago loves to attack with. And this is where the matchup becomes so fascinating. The Steelers' run defense has been inconsistent, but when Ramsey and Dugger trigger downhill on two high structures, they erase mistakes quickly. That's going to matter, because Patrick Queen's volatility in coverage and tackling is the exact window Chicago will try to exploit. Then you get into the boundary matchups, the ones that can swing a game with a single snap. Joey Porter Jr. taking Rome Odunze is the kind of physical, high-stakes battle Pittsburgh embraces. But the other side? Mike Tomlin made it clear he plans to start Darius Slay, who has been inconsistent all season. The Bears will attack that with DJ Moore. Pittsburgh will attack similar matchups with DK Metcalf. Both teams see the same weakness: Both teams will try to isolate it. Both teams will try to turn it into a momentum surge. And through all of this, one theme keeps coming back inside the organization. This game will be defined by which team forces the other to play left-handed. If Pittsburgh can dictate personnel, force Chicago out of its comfort zone, and keep the game in Rudolph's or Rodgers' control instead of Caleb Williams' chaos, they tilt the field. If Chicago forces the Steelers into third and long, attacks Patrick Queen, isolates Slay, and forces extended plays, they tilt it back. At this point in the season, you don't just game plan, you reveal who you are. And this matchup, more than any in recent weeks, is going to expose strengths, weaknesses, and truth on both sides. So tell me, Steelers Nation, after everything laid out here, after understanding the layers, the matchups, the pressure points, and the stakes, do you believe Pittsburgh has the upper hand going into Soldier Field? Picking up right where we left off. Because once you peel back the layers on this matchup, you start to see the real tension that's been building all week inside the Steelers facility. Not panic, not uncertainty, but the kind of focused urgency that only shows up in seasons where every game feels like it could tilt the balance of January. What really stands out when you talk to people around the team is this: Pittsburgh believes it can win this game in multiple ways, and that flexibility is something Chicago simply doesn't have. That alone changes the tone of preparation. Even with the questions around Aaron Rodgers' wrist and the Friday practice ultimatum from Mike Tomlin, the Steelers have built a fully functional plan for both quarterback scenarios. And that's not something you do unless you trust your foundation on both sides of the ball. If Rodgers plays, the Bears have to defend every blade of grass. Even with the finger injury that's clearly impacted his accuracy since Week 9, his mental processing still forces defenses to widen their responsibilities. He sees rotations pre-snap. He manipulates safeties. He uses cadence to bait linebackers into false steps. And if Chicago tries to blitz him the way they've done against less experienced quarterbacks, he'll punish it with quick game and timing windows. But the real stress point becomes whether he can absorb even one awkward fall. That fractured wrist may be on his non-throwing hand, but ball handling, mesh points, shotgun snaps, and bracing for contact all rely on it. That's exactly why Tomlin isn't budging. The standard doesn't bend for availability. Availability must fit the standard. If it's Mason Rudolph, the offense turns into something far more structure-driven, but not less dangerous. He is a timing passer, a progression passer, a pocket passer who stays on script and delivers. That plays directly into Arthur Smith's strengths: condensed formations, layered play action, jumbo sets, and defined reads. It may not produce explosions the way Rodgers can when fully healthy, but it can control tempo, protect the defense, and eliminate risk. And the locker room truly trusts Rudolph. That matters more than fans realize. Meanwhile, the Steelers' defense has been preparing for one of the most uniquely challenging quarterbacks they'll face this season. Caleb Williams turns broken plays into opportunities. He holds the ball longer than anyone in the league in terms of raw time to throw, but not because he's indecisive, because he's capable of extending plays into 9-second chaos sequences that break coverage structures. That's why Mike Tomlin has emphasized crush rush integrity all week. There's no freelancing in this game. No over-pursuit. No trying to make a hero play. Every gap must be occupied. Every lane must be closed. Every tackle must be finished. And this is where the evolution of the Steelers' secondary becomes one of the most underappreciated storylines of the season. Jalen Ramsey at safety has completely reshaped how this defense reacts. Instead of reacting 2 steps late, the back end is now triggering downhill with force. Instead of playing predictable post-snap structures, the defense is layering disguise into rotations that make quarterbacks hesitate. And Kyle Duggar has been the perfect complement: violent, instinctive, and reliable. These two allow Pittsburgh to play more two-high shells without sacrificing run support, something that's going to be crucial against Chicago's top-ranked explosive play rate. But the Bears' offense isn't just about Caleb Williams. Their running game has turned into a legitimate problem for defenses. DeAndre Swift has found rhythm and confidence in ways he didn't earlier this year, and Monangai brings a burst that forces defenders to take perfect angles. Chicago uses the run to set up everything: the in-breaking routes, the deep play-action shots, the horizontal stretches that test discipline. And this is where the Steelers have been inconsistent. They've shut down elite backs like Josh Jacobs and Jonathan Taylor, and then allowed unexpected near 100-yard performances against less established runners. The difference lately has been the safety play: Duggar and Ramsey cleaning up on the back end, allowing the front to play faster and more aggressively. But the most delicate part of this matchup may be the boundary corners. Joey Porter Jr. on Rome Odunze is a heavyweight matchup: physical, disciplined, and intense. But the other side? Mike Tomlin has already said he'll start Darius Slay, who has struggled across multiple phases this season, and Chicago will not hesitate to attack him with DJ Moore. That's not speculation, it's the most obvious matchup of the game. The Steelers know it, the Bears know it, and how Pittsburgh protects Slay may determine whether this is a grinded-out defensive win or a shootout they don't want to get pulled into. Then there's the emotional factor, something rarely talked about, but always present. Rodgers wants this game, the history with Chicago, the competitiveness, the stage, the opportunity to silence doubts about his hand. But the Steelers aren't letting emotion dictate anything this week. This is about winning in November, about positioning in the AFC North, about staying ahead of Baltimore, about keeping pace with a conference where every loss can reshuffle playoff odds by the hour. And that leads us to the real weight of this matchup. The team that forces the other off script, not schematically, but psychologically, wins. If Pittsburgh's defense forces Caleb Williams into hurried decisions instead of extended creativity, they tilt the field. If the Bears make the Steelers one-dimensional and attack the weak points in coverage, they tilt it back. It's not about who has the biggest stars. It's about who can impose the game they want to play longer than the other side. So here's how I'll close this out for this final stretch of the preview. Steelers Nation, with everything laid out, the quarterback uncertainty, the defensive evolution, the matchups on the perimeter, the physicality at the line of scrimmage, and the stakes in the AFC North. Do you believe Pittsburgh has built the right blueprint to take control of this game? Drop your thoughts, predictions, and gut feelings. And of course, make sure you're subscribed, hit the like button to support the channel, and check out the videos on your screen for more Steelers breakdowns. Continuing seamlessly, because there's still a little more depth to pull from this matchup, the kind of underlying detail that fans feel instinctively, even if they don't always have the language for it. And this game, more than most on the schedule, carries that weight of context, the sense that one or two subtle factors could swing the entire afternoon. One of those factors is something people inside the organization have been whispering all week: composure. Not just quarterback composure, team composure. Chicago has thrived this season on chaotic, extended plays that force defenses to cover for far longer than their structure is designed to. Those 9-second plays, those scramble drill explosives, those should have been a sack but somehow wasn't moments. That's where the Bears steal momentum. And